hip thrusts, lunges, and split squats. Oh my. Just, because I listen. That's the thing that makes me different from other people. I listen. And I listen very carefully whenever there's high-level coaches with a lot of experience. And I can't help but notice that a lot of these very high-level coaches with extensive years and years, decades of experience, keep pointing out that these movements are not ideal movements for you. So, we can just start off with something like Bulgarian split squats and, Brian Carroll, Stu McGill, they warn against this. It, can stretch the pelvis and people develop a lot of SI problems. I think Coach Kavanaugh pointed that out as well. And I believe I've heard Carl Val say that. And, there's just been a lot of very high-level coaches with a lot of experience pointing out that Bulgarian split squats are not a great movement for a lot of people. They tend to cause lower back problems for many people and SI problems. So if you have an SI joint issue, maybe that's not a good movement for you. Now, maybe you are built like an oak and your spine doesn't move and your pelvis is locked in place. Sure, it's a fine movement for you, but no movement is perfect for everyone. Lunges. You can do lunges. I think Pavel had a quote, something along the lines of, if you can't do lunges, don't do lunges, and if you can do lunges, still don't do lunges. And as Dan John has pointed out, you can go find a video of Dan John discussing this even with Juji Mufu. John Cal, I think is his actual real name, I think. Dan John explains why you shouldn't do lunges, and he's right. I've heard lots of people point out that you shouldn't be doing lunges. Now, this isn't to say you can't do body weight lunges or walking lunges, but when people load up heavy lunges, you see a lot of knee injuries and a lot of knee problems. In fact, one of the things I've found to be very interesting is the number of times I've seen people injure the back leg. Now, I've seen all kinds of weird quad tears and hamstring issues even, hip flexor problems, trochanter bursitis with the back leg. Weird. Why would that be? Probably because people are overloading it. And so now instead of the front leg doing the work, they're using the back leg to try to compensate so they can get this maximal weight up. And that's probably why they're injuring the back leg, because they're overusing that back leg. Now, this isn't to say that, if you do walking lunges or something, that, necessarily you're just going to automatically injure yourself. But when you start loading these things, knees don't like them, hips don't like them, and low backs don't like them. Again, similar to the split squat, it does funky things to your SI joints. So, I especially don't like forward lunges. Now, if you want to do alternating reverse lunges, I find that alternating reverse lunges are much easier on the joints than forward alternating lunges. But I still wouldn't load them heavy. In fact, I wouldn't load them at all. If you're going to do them, I would not add load. If you're just doing body weight, rock on. But as soon as I see people load them, I see issues. And the hip thrust. Coach Kavanaugh probably wrote the best thing on why you shouldn't be doing hip thrusts. If you want to do hip thrusts with lightweight, I doubt you're going to injure yourself. But lots of people are doing heavy hip thrusts. Not a real good idea. In fact, actually, if you watch people do heavy hip thrusts, they're really not even doing the movement correctly. 99% of the time, they're doing the movement incorrectly because they're just trying to move weight, the ego lifting, as lots of people refer to it. And if you think about things, a hip thrust really doesn't mimic anything that we do in sport. You are never, ever in that position. And additionally to the whole hip thrust thing, I know it's supposed to be great for your glutes. But you know who has the biggest and strongest glutes? Strongman competitors. Yeah, and strongman competitors don't do hip thrusts. They pick up Atlas stones and they do deadlifts. Wonder why that is. So, I've shared the story before. I was watching World's Strongest Man with a former girlfriend of mine, and she pointed out that they all have really nice big butts. And I was like, what? because that would never cross my mind. And when she pointed it out, she's like, yeah, it looks like they just have two bowling balls for butt cheeks. They have really nice butts. Like, even though they're big and fat, like, they have really nice butts. And I was like, huh? I had to think about it for a minute, and I realized, oh, huh, that's interesting. So, fast forward, I don't even know how many years, I found myself at strength camp with Elliot Hulse, and we were doing Atlas stones. The next day I woke up, and my glutes have never been that sore in my entire life. What's going on there? I've done tons of deadlifts, I've done tons of cleans, I've done hip thrusts, I've done everything you can think of. But Atlas stones were a new thing for me. And Atlas stones made my glutes sore in a way that I can't replicate with any other movement. Weird. And so as I continued training with Elliot, log presses and, heavy deadlifts, axle bar deadlifts, Atlas stones, picking up just heavy things off the ground, that is the biggest my butt ever got. My glutes were just disproportionately growing from picking up heavy shit off the ground. Sprinters, there's another one for you. And if you don't feel your glutes when you sprint, let me give you a really hot tip. Stretch your hip flexors. Yeah. If you stretch your hip flexors beforehand and then you run a sprint, you're going to be like, what the hell? I've never felt my glutes like this. Yeah, I know. Me neither. And then I did it, and it worked. So, stretch your hip flexors and then do sprints, especially hill sprints. Oh, boy, your glutes will light up. Okay? So, anyways, I just find it interesting that these are movements that many, many coaches out there are warning you. These aren't good movements. They don't have good transfer. They don't seem to improve performance. It's not like having a huge hip thrust gives you a huge deadlift. It doesn't. And so, it's an interesting thing to me how people think that these things will transfer, and they just simply don't. It's kind of like the whole thing. I think it was Keir Wenham-Flatt that made the comment once about the Bulgarian split squat. Mike Boyle made some argument that, if you can split squat 300 pounds, you can back squat 600 pounds, which there's no way a person with a 300-pound Bulgarian split squat would back squat 600 pounds. Because when you put 600 pounds on your back, it's a totally different game. And even Mike should know this, because Mike always says that the limiting factor in the back squat is your back. And that's why you shouldn't squat. And I argue that the limiting factor in the back squat is your back, and that's why you should squat. But anyways, Keir made this comment that you can't bang 2 5s and say you banged a 10. Brilliant. Fucking brilliant. Okay? No. These things sound like they would be the same, right? 2 5s equals a 10. But in reality, a 300-pound Bulgarian split squat, you're still using your back leg. So it isn't truly just single leg. Maybe if you did a 300-pound pistol squat, then maybe you'd be able to do a 600-pound back squat, right? But if you're using your back leg, a 300-pound lunge or 300-pound split squat does not equal a 600-pound squat. In fact, very few things equal a 600-pound squat other than a 600-pound squat. So just because you can deadlift 700 doesn't mean you'll squat 600. Just because you can hip thrust, I don't fucking care, 800 doesn't mean you'll squat 600. It's just not the way things work, folks. So anyways, that's what I got for you, right? Lunges, split squats, and hip thrusts. Seems like a lot of coaches with a lot of experience out there are warning you, hey, these aren't movements that are high on the payback, the ROI, right? Return on investment, more risk than reward. So perhaps you should choose other movements that have lower risk and higher reward.